Well, every road I see leads away from me. There's not a single one that leads me home. The road keeps saying, friend, come see what's round the bend. So is it any wonder that I roam? All the places I have been keep calling me back again. Down in the pines I hear the cold winds blow. My heart keeps telling me, foot loose and fancy free, and the road goes by and calls me as it goes. Well, maybe somewhere there's a someone waiting with a smile, and maybe there'll be some place I can stop and rest a while. And maybe you weren't meant to be just a rolling stone, and there's a road to travel on that leads you back to home.
All right. I guess we're rolling. I never get tired of that intro, though. I kind of like it, but we're going to have to think of some others when we come up and get to doing some of the other stuff here at some point. All right. So, everybody, welcome to Tales of the Trails. I'm Duke, of course, and over here on that side is Garrett Woods from 11 Bang Bang.
Hi.
He's basically the manager of this thing. I'm just the talent that comes on here, so.
You do all the work. I just sit over here and read comments.
He sets everything up for me. So, anyways, speaking of that, usually what we do is Garrett goes through and reads off who all we got, because I think we kind of set that when we was running on both channels, and I can only see on mine, but I'll let him keep doing that.
I've been making gunpowder. I just realized I have charcoal on the side of my nose. Oh, well. We have Louisiana Gray is in here. He said, as always, Duke, I'm ready and looking forward to your show. Right. Gunsmith 4570 says, howdy, folks. And he says, hey, Duke, been looking forward to the scouts. Stephen M. Mann said, the mountain man has entered the room.
Hey,
yes, sir, Bourgeois.
Louisiana.
Sorry. What'd you say?
Bourgeois.
That's bourgeois.
Bushway was from bourgeois.
Bourgeois. Depends on which area of Saskatchewan you come from, I guess.
Yeah.
Louisiana Gray says, good evening, Duke. William Schlossler's in. He said, hey, Duke, happy Easter all. Happy Easter to you, too. And he said, showtime. Oregon Outback says, that's a beautiful pony the scout on the left is riding in the thumbnail picture. Diane Houston's in, and she says, howdy. George Gooding's in. He says, Yahoo, made it on time.
All right.
John Koch is in. Doug Duke said, hey, Duke and Woods.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Doug. Hardy is in. He said, hello, you silly humans. Sean Dahl is in. He said, you really enjoy that song. Oh, he said, yeah, really enjoy that song. Sorry. Doug Duke says, can us mere mortals get one of those shirts, Garrett? 11 Bang Bang shirt. Yes, we're very much working on that. My wife even got the machine to make them, so just bear with us, and I'm just plugging our channel a little bit here on Duke's channel. Duke sells holsters, guys. William Slosser says that wagon reminds me of my Ford, always pushing it. So anyway, that brings us in here, and we have 21 people here watching and climbing. So whenever you're ready, Duke.
All right, yeah, there was something else I was going to mention on here before we got too far in, but
the rules.
Thanks for reminding. That wasn't what was on my mind, but we definitely need to do that. So, just like with the 11 Bang Bang Reload show, we keep politics out unless it's historical politics. I'll allow that because we're here for the history. Modern politics, just keep it up the door. I think everybody on here pretty much agrees anyway. Don't get too wild in the comments over there. I'm not as strict as 11 Bang Bang on the curse words, but let's keep it Please PG-13 rated. And just don't be a dick, basically. It's the only way I can think about it. So with that, I guess we will get rolling here. I'm gonna wet my whistle here. All right, so this today's topic is all on the Scouts, and we're gonna focus mostly on the Scouts in the Plains region because that's the Scouts I know about. Sure, there were Scouts all over the country. If we go back clear into the Revolutionary War, there were notable Scouts then. You get out and further west you get, there's notable Scouts that did things. The Indian Wars that took place over in Oregon, Idaho, Nez Perce Wars and such, Snake Wars. Also down in Arizona, most notable ones there, Al Sieber, Tom Horn, and several others. But we're not going to get too much into them just because I honestly don't know a lot about those guys. But I do know about a lot of them that was in the Plains area. And basically, it's really the Scouts for the Plains are going to get started when the Mountain Men come out because it's going to be those Mountain Men that become Scouts. So, of course, 1823 there, the Ashley Expedition is going to take off. And it's a bunch of young guys out looking for adventure, looking to make money. And they wind up being basically the pathfinders for westward expansion, if you will. And I'm not going to limit it to just Army Scouts. These guys are Scouts even for Oregon Trail folks, too. So they come out to the west. They start exploring. Spend a lot of years out here getting to know the people, the land, the territory that they're in. And some of those guys stayed out there for most of their lives, like Jim Bridger. When he come west with the Ashley Expedition, he was 17 years old. And he stayed out until his family basically came and got him and took him back east. And then he lasted a few more years, but he spent most of his life out in the west. Jedediah Smith, unfortunately, met an untimely end, but he was one of those that come out and got familiar with the country. So a lot of these guys, like I said, spent a lot of time out here. They traveled all the way from the Mississippi to the California and Oregon coasts. And so you figured 10, 20, 30 years exploring out here in the West, they got a pretty intricate knowledge of what was going on. Because you had to survive. You couldn't just rely on going to the grocery store if you ran out of groceries. The grocery store required you go out and kill it or dig it up first. Mm-hmm. So that knowledge that they're going to gain, of course, starts to play a role once civilization, if you will, starts to make its way west. So by the time you get into the 1840s, a lot of these mountaineers are not really trapping beaver anymore. In 1840, they have the last rendezvous. 1842 is the last decent year for beaver. But by that point, the beaver are so trapped out. There's a few other trappers that try to hang on and keep trapping, such as old Bill Williams. But they just decide to find other lines of work at that point. And it's also about the time period that you really are going to start to see more and more folks coming across the trails. Now, some folks say that the Oregon Trail gets opened when the Whitmans come through to set up their mission. But really, the first immigrants that go to Oregon to settle and farm come in 1841. And
immigrants?
Immigrants! And that caught me off guard, about maybe jump because I didn't realize my speaker was that loud.
Sorry. You can't get in wagons over those mountains.
So anyway,
quick trivia if you guys out there know what movie that comes from. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So Broken Hand Fitzpatrick, Thomas Broken Hand Fitzpatrick, he was a mountain man. For a lot of years, he worked as a trader. For a lot of years, he helped operate Fort William, that would become Fort John, eventually Fort Laramie. And he also becomes an Indian agent before he dies in 1854, I think it was. So he's going to lead the first ones to Oregon. And even though well, there wasn't much of a trail at that point, but he's going to lead them through. And even though there gets a trail established, you're still going to have these mountaineers and such leading these immigrants across, because the immigrants don't have a clue where to find water. They don't have a clue where to find food. And so these mountaineers, these that become scouts, are going to be essential to guiding regular folks across the trails until it gets to the point where, you got enough trading posts that, everybody can pretty well guide themselves, and there's enough road there that everybody can guide themselves. So that's when you're going to start seeing them kind of getting into that scouting role. And then once the 1850s come along and you start seeing more and more conflict between the U.S. troops, government, and the Native Americans, these men are going to start really serving that role as scouts. The 1850s, I forget who the scout was, but it was a mountaineer that had led or basically guided Harney to Blue Water Creek or Ash Hollow, and he's going to wipe out a Brule village there. And so, yeah, that's when these men start taking on that military role as that military comes out west. Mm-hmm. And as you roll on into the 1860s, the conflict continues on. But that's also about the time period where you start to see the trappers kind of die out, if you will, literally, because by the 1860s, they're getting too old to keep on scouting. So by the end of the Civil War, the Indian Wars are really starting to pick up. 1864 was a bad year. 1865 is even worse. And right on the heels of that, from 66 to 68, it's going to be Red Cloud's War. And so up in the Northern Plains, Jim Bridger is going to fill that role as scout, and he'd been scouting for the Army for a long time. The thing is by the time you get around to the late 1860s, Jim Bridger's getting to where he can't see very well. In fact, his last scouting expedition probably couldn't see the ears of his horse while sitting on the horse's back. He was relying on the Indian scouts that he could converse with, and then the officers couldn't understand the Indians. And so they'd tell him what they found, and then he'd pass it along. So he kind of just became the interpreter at that point. And so he's going to continue on, but like I said, by the 1860s, he's getting too old to do it. And in 1864, Jim Beckworth, who is one of the most noted African-American mountain men, he's going to guide Shivington. He's going to act as a scout for Shivington when Shivington attacked Sand Creek, although it was Robert Bent that was forced to guide the military to the camp on Sand Creek. And so, yeah, that generation is starting to go out. A few years after that, Jim Beckworth is going to die probably of high blood pressure, essentially, because even during the Sand Creek raid, he was complaining constantly of headaches and nosebleeds. And we're not talking the small nosebleeds like the gushers. And so somewhere between 67 and 68, he's going to finally go under. And the next generation of scouts start to take their place. And that next generation is primarily the mixed blood or half-breed children, if you will, of those mountaineers and their Indian wives. It was their Indian children that become these scouts. And so up in the Fort Laramie area, of course, where I'm most familiar with, there's a lot of them that pop up there. You see the Geneses. There's a lot of Geneses. Nicholas, Antoine, and the thing of it is they name a lot of their kids after their siblings, so it gets pretty confusing when you're trying to keep track of who's who. You also have the Boyers, or Boyers, if you want to pronounce it the old-fashioned way. Mitch Boyer and his brother John Boyer. Of course, John Boyer is going to get killed before he really gets to play a part in much scouting. And you're going to see the Rishaws. The Rishaw boys play the role of scouts. And so, yeah, that's the next generation starts to take its place. And that generation is really going to be the most pivotal when it comes to the Indian Wars conflict. So the previous generation of scouts, they've been in the start of that conflict. Their children are going to be the end, see the end of those conflicts. And I'm going to take a quick soda break here if you want to go ahead and read off the chat there.
I'll read off the chat, and then I'll lead us back in with a question here in just a second, because you might be about to answer it anyway. All right, so let's go up here. Yeah, guys, if you have any questions in the comments, shout them out. I'll be stopping periodically here to read them. Okay, so we're gonna start with Stephen M. said Beckwith. I don't know what that was about necessarily.
Yeah, Jim Beckworth. He's also called Beckwith,
Yeah.
but Beckworth is the actual. He gets called Beckwith by some other trappers, if I remember.
Okay. And William Slosser said, I can click on these. My new profile picture is just for 11 Bang Bang. Cool. I'm sure Ethan could understand it better than I can, but it looks like a patch.
Looks like, that was, go ahead and click him back up there. That's a guide on, I think that's 1st Division, 17th Infantry, Company A.
Yeah. Ethan's the guy that was in the Army, not me, but I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
I may be backwards on that, but I think that's what it is.
Okay. Chris Klein said, hello all. William Slosser said, hoo-ah. Doug Duke said, immigrants. Stephen M. Mann said, that was The Mountain Men by Charlton Heston. Yes. Hardy said, just thought of something. Was that Preacher and Jeremiah Johnson based on the guy going to set up a mission? I don't remember the Preacher and Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah, the Preacher was the one leading the guys up there to rescue the...
I thought that was a military captain. I didn't know he was a preacher.
There was a preacher in there with him, yeah.
The guy with the glasses was a preacher?
Yeah.
It was never pointed out. I guess I never understood that.
Yeah, he was a preacher, and then the guy wearing the buffalo cap was the captain.
Yeah, I assume they were both military, I guess.
No, that was a preacher. But yeah, and the thing is, I think, Whitman was killed long before that would have even taken place. Mm-hmm. But Jeremiah Johnson, that movie's a screw up.
Great movie, though.
Great movie. Historical screw up, but great movie.
Hardy said he never guided me to Ash Hollow. Harney, not Hardy. Everything black powder's in, and he said, hello, boys. And Hardy said he's fashionably late. Stephen M. Man said, yes, got blind enough in Missouri on even more blind mule, talking about the smoke in the distance. Texan wants to know, where's Billy Yank at here lately?
When I get done doing holsters, I'll finally get the last 2 episodes for the season.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
just a day late and $1 short. Stephen M. Man, everything. William Slosser said, Wild Bill Hickok was scout.
Yep.
I think the taking of scalps needs to. We're not going to say that live on YouTube. Hardy said everything. Yeah. Okay. No politics. Yeah, that's the way we keep it generally. Kodak Tackman's in. He said, hello, fellas. 6 said, scalping isn't political, more territorial. Depends on who you scalp, William says. All right, so we're back into it. I just wanted to go back and touch on the older scouts we were just talking about because you were talking about Tom Tobin before we came live. And let's talk about, just answer my quick question here. And I kind of know the answer, but I kind of wanted to go over it. Let's talk about firearms that the scouts used in that era, post fur trade, early scouts. What do you think?
So, yeah, that's going to be when you start seeing more of the Hawkins come into play for sure. Tom Tobin carried one heck of a Hawken rifle. Holy Moses. That was about the same time that Kit Carson got his Hawken. Jim Bridger got his. And also 51 Navy, surprisingly, were extremely popular amongst these frontiersmen. That was mostly you're going to see is Hawkins with those Mountaineers in their later years. Trying to think, there's one guy, if I remember right, had a Sharps in the 1850s, but I cannot remember which one it was. But he was a notable Mountaineer. So, that's most of the ones that you're going to see there. And I see Garrett dropped off there, so I don't know if I answered his question or not.
Yes, you did. Sorry, I had Ethan calling me on the phone. I thought it might be an emergency. It wasn't.
Hey, I hope it's not an emergency because you got to shut this off.
Yeah. Nope. We're good. Yeah, you answered my question there. I just kind of wanted to touch on that. Did you touch? I didn't hear everything though. Did you touch on Colt revolvers?
Yeah,
Dragoons,
some
maybe?
51 Navies. Yeah, and then some of the guys carried Dragoons as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you look at Tom Tobin, um, he's carrying a 51 Navy. I don't know how well you can see that. My camera ain't the best, but right there under my finger, he's carrying a 51 Navy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, they were known to carry the Colts because at that point Colts were about the only decent revolver you had an option for. Looks like my doggies are in. So yeah, pretty much yeah. At that time, like I said, it's going to still be muzzle loaders, few breech loaders with the sharps and such. I think if it was William Hamilton talks about using sharps out in California when he scouted a little bit, but yeah. And then of course once you get into the cartridge era, yeah, it's whatever they want to buy. A lot of Henrys and Winchesters at that point. All right, so we was kind of getting in when we left off there, getting into the second generation of scouts. So yeah, I'd mentioned the Rishaws, the Genesis, the Boyers, the Bordeaux. So a lot of the mixed blood children from those mountaineers and traders that had come out in the 1830s and 40s, they're going to start coming in and becoming a lot of the scouts at that point. And so you're going to see them make a play basically right there as the last generation is moving out in the 1860s during the post-Civil War years. Even a few of them coming in during the Civil War as well. Ben Arnold, if that was really even his real name because he changed his name quite a bit. But Ben Arnold was one that had come out to Fort Laramie. During the Civil War, he was attached to one of the state militia units. I can't remember which one it was, 11th of Kansas or 11th Ohio. But anyway, he came out and deserted or was considered a deserter, but was basically given a slap on the wrist, thrown back in his unit. But he got thrown in with a unit that had some galvanized Yankees, which if you're not familiar with what a galvanized Yankee is, that was a Confederate that was captured and was released on the condition that they served so many years in the U.S. military. And so he's going to be thrown in with a bunch of those. And putting the galvanized Yankees all together wasn't a good idea for the U.S. Army because then they start talking about, getting even and going back to the South. And so he hears them talking about that one night, saying how they're going to kill a bunch of their men in their unit that are not the galvanized and get away. And he got scared. And so he deserted once again, this time for good. He doesn't go back to the Army. But he does become a scout because he spends time out in the area. And he'll later become a scout operating in and out of that area. And you're also going to see, men that I've talked about, Frank Gruard, who was son of a Mormon missionary and a Pacific Islander. So he's kind of an unusual one to see out here in the West. Because, you don't see a lot of Pacific Islanders, but he becomes a very notable scout for General Crook during the Great Sioux War. And he's going to operate and be an interpreter and a scout for the Army even up into the 1880s, working up at the fort that they put up, which is Fort... Oh, gosh, now I can't remember which one it was, but it was one that wound up there by Buffalo after Fort Fetterman. I think it was up there. Anyway... So, yeah, so getting into that, during that Great Sioux War, that's where you really see the ones out there at Fort Laramie area really come into play. So, yeah, up there at Fort Laramie, when Crook first comes out to start the Great Sioux War, essentially, for the first expedition up into the Powder River country in March of 1876, he has it in his head that he can use the exact same tactics that he had been using in Arizona, because Crook was in Arizona twice. So he's in the early 1870s. Then he was promoted to commander of the Department of the Platte, which basically gave him everything from Nebraska through Wyoming and such. They're going to send him there. So he's going to take part in the Great Sioux War. And then he'll go back after that, back to Arizona once again. But his first time down in Arizona, he learned a couple things. One, pack mules work a lot better than wagons in rough country for moving supplies, which he's correct on. They do. And the other thing is with the Apaches, he found out that you can hire Apaches to track down Apaches because the Apache bands are not as tightly knit as some of the other groups. So he brings those ideas up here to try to use them. Of course, they don't work because using mules to pack in wintertime just doesn't work. And so he's off to a bad start on his first campaign there. And also, he figures, well, he can go to the Lakota camps, the reservation, Red Cloud Agency and such, and he can hire on Indian scouts to go against the Lakotas he's going after. And he finds out that ain't going to happen on that first try. And so he decides, well, I'm going to hire some of the civilian scouts that are operating out here. And so he manages to hire about 40 some odd men at Fort Laramie. One of those is Frank Gerard, of course. Louis Reshaw, possibly one of Reshaw's younger brothers. Big Bat Pouillet, who was married into the Reshaw family. Little Bat Garnier, who was also married or mixed in with the Reshaws. That's how they got distinguished as Big Bat and Little Bat, because both of them are Baptiste as their first name, which you're going to find up in the North Country. That's a pretty common name. Mm-hmm. Baptiste or Jean Baptiste.
Or Pierre.
Yeah. So, you got Big Bat, Little Bat, Frank Gerard, Louis Reshaw. Let's see, you have on the first one, you're going to have Buckskin Jack Russell, and he gets his name because he's always clad in full buckskins. And so you're going to see a lot of the guys that time, they're still running around buckskin because in the 1860s and 70s, buckskin jackets are the thing. And the more fringy they are, the more fancy they are. So that's kind of carrying on from the Mountain Man days when the Mountain Men were around in buckskins. But Buckskin Jack Russell was noted to wear buckskin from head to toe. He had on the shirt, the jacket, the pants, the moccasins. And so he was with that first run. And there's several other names that I cannot remember because, like I said, there's about 40 of them. Some of them are well noted, and some of them were just there to collect army pay and didn't do a whole lot. But once Crook gets up and starts heading into that northern country, he finds out that, these scouts he's got are pretty decent. And on this first one, he doesn't really bother with the Indian scouts at this point because he's got so many civilian scouts. And so Frank Gerard, Big Bat Pouillet, and like I said, Louis Reshaw are probably the three best that he's got, but his favorite is Frank Gerard. And when they start getting close to the Indian country, Crook starts to ask the scouts, where am I going to find the Indians I'm after? And Frank Gerard says, you're going to find Crazy Horse over here on this section of the Powder River, which Frank Gerard would know. Frank Gerard spent the last 2 years living with Crazy Horse. And so he tells him there. Louis Reshaw says, no, they're going to be over here on the Tongue. Big Bat Pierre thinks they're going to be over on the Rosebud. Well, the thing of it is, they're all three right. There's going to be natives and all that because in the wintertime, they're dispersed out. They're camped out where they've got good secure areas away from the weather, just try to survive the winter until the spring comes in. They can start the spring buffalo hunt. But Crook is going to send Frank Gerard along with Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds to find Crazy Horse's village over on the Powder River. And, of course, Frank Gerard is going to make the mistake and misidentify a Northern Cheyenne village as Crazy Horse's village. And that's because supposedly there may have been one of Crazy Horse's chiefs, one of his followers there, He Dog, and had Crazy Horse's personal horses with him. And that's why Frank Gerard misidentified the village. But they weren't too far off because Crazy Horse's village was just another day's ride further up the Powder River. And, we'll get into that one in another chat. We'll redo Great Sioux War, but that is going to end in disaster because once Reynolds gets upon the camp, he basically quits listening to the scouts and does his own thing, and that campaign turns into a disaster. Because they not only don't capture any natives from that village, they don't capture the horse herd. Actually, they capture it and then they lose it, and they leave the men with very little in the way of supplies and warm clothing. So yeah, Reynolds is going to wind up getting basically drummed out of the military over that ordeal. But as Sioux War is going to continue on, those scouts are going to play a role. And once you get into the June campaign, which actually starts in May, but you get into that June campaign that eventually is going to lead to the demise of Custer, that's when Crook is going to really start relying on Indian scouts once again. And he tries to get some of the Lakotas, and if I remember right, he doesn't get any on this expedition either. But he does get Crow, and he does get Shoshone and a handful of others. And the Shoshone and Crow scouts are going to save his bacon at the Battle of Rosebud because they're going to be out on the flanks, and essentially they're going to come in contact with Crazy Horse's attack first. That's going to give Crook time to kind of deploy. And then that big battle, as big a battle and as important a battle as it was, there's very little loss on both sides. The numbers of loss was about even, with about 11 killed and 40-some wounded possibly. And it's an all-day battle. But if it hadn't been for those Crow scouts out on that flank, it might have been a little bit worse for Crook because he winds up wasting half of his ammunition anyway during that battle. But that battle, or that campaign, I should say, is unsuccessful. And so they'll start the next campaign pretty much on its heels in August. That's the one that gets noted as the Horse Meat March. And he's going to have a lot of the same scouts guiding him along. Frank Garrard, once again, will prove his mettle. He'll be the one that helps Mills find Americans' horses village at Slim Butte. And they're going to recover the guidon, one of the guidons from the 7th Cavalry, as well as Mile Keogh's gloves. So that would be basically the first victory after Custer for the U.S. Army. But on that one, that's when he starts picking up a few more Lakota scouts, and I need to read more up on them. I wish Saboteur was on here because he could give a little more insight. But after that point, then you start seeing him pick up some of the Cheyenne and Lakota scouts on the reservations.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I need another drink.
Okay, let's go over here. They're fighting the Civil War in the comment section. So, let's go back up here. William Slosser said, Wild Bill Hickok Scout. I believe I might have already read it. Yeah, I'm still into we didn't talk much about it, but Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
Well, they say the last of the great scouts, but I'm pretty sure that there's a few after him.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to go through here, guys, and just kind of look for questions. Here we go. Hardy had one. He said, just got a percussion 10-gauge double barrel. Any idea when those stop being made?
I think you can still get them. I think Dixie Gunworks still has them listed. They just haven't been bringing a lot of them in because ever since COVID, the Italian market has not been making a lot of them. But Dixie still has them. I'd love to have one. I just don't want to pay that much money for something I ain't going to use that much.
I think his question is, when did they stop making percussion double-barrel shotguns in history, maybe?
Oh, back in the day.
You're going to see them all the way up into, people use them for a very long time. I don't know when the last one was used, but go ahead, Duke. By
the late 1870s, I imagine nobody's making percussion guns at that point because Colt stopped in 73. Remington stopped in by 1870, I think.
Meteor over in Belgium was still important for a very long time.
But to be honest with you, shotguns are one of the guns I do not know a lot of.
Me neither.
Holy most! There are so many shotgun makers in Europe. My God, there's
Belgium especially.
Forget a lot to figure out. Remember what all was going on. But yeah, there was a lot of shotguns that were coming in. The only ones I know off the top of my head is you had Greener, Colt made the double barrel, of course, Winchester made the lever and the pump. Trying to think, there was some of the ones you got. I can't remember the names of them. So anyway, yeah, there was a lot of shotgun makers back in the day.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that since you said it's on made of twist steel, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's probably 1850s to 70s, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
They made the Damascus twist barrels for a long time.
Yeah, but it's in a percussion double barrel 10 gauge.
Oh.
My guess is it's probably made somewhere between 1849 and 1870. Could be a little later than that, but that's just a wild guess.
Yeah, without it has. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. They're still going on about Civil War stuff in here. Diane Houston asked, "Do you guys know how much money scouts made?"
Yeah. So scouts on average are paid. Now you put me on the spot. $125 a month.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and it depends on where they're at too. But up in the Fort Laramie area is about $125 a month. If you could supply your own horse, they would give you an extra $25 a month for the care of the horse. So yeah, there's big conjecture that Big Bat Poirier was Crook's favorite scout because he got $150 a month while everybody else got $125. Well, it just so happens that Big Bat wanted to ride his horse, and the other scouts are like, if we're gonna go fight for the army out here, get shot at, we're gonna use their horses.
Yeah,
but Big Bat wanted his horse. And Big Bat loses and leaves his horse behind during the Sibley Scout there right after the Rosebud battle. So, but yeah, that was the thing, is it was average about $125 a month, which if I remember right, that's the same pay as a captain.
Yeah, that's pretty good considering early 1870s cattle hands on the trails make $30 a month. that scouting paid. Kodak Tackman said, had a galvanized Yankee on at least one part of my family. And William.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Schossler said, I'm on a stagecoach line from Pueblo to Fairplay. Still use the well at one station.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to get into it, guys. You all know where I stand, and I know where Duke stands, but I don't think it needs to be mentioned.
Oh, I'm a good old rebel now.
That's just what I am. And for the Yankee Nation, we don't like Uncle Sam.
Oh, that's nicer than the one I
know. So Hardy said, so John Wayne and the Big Trail was actually accurate because the man was rocking the buckskins in that movie.
Yeah, if I remember right, that is actually one, because they were, if I remember right, they were lowering the wagons down the side of the hill on ropes, and that is pretty darn accurate.
And he has a really good hat in that movie. It's not like a cattleman's crease or anything, just a straight Boss of the Plains.
I got to be honest, I've only seen parts of that movie. I haven't seen it all the way through.
I've seen it all, but it's been some time ago. It's one of his first starring roles into that much. Hardy says, shoves popcorn in mouth. They fix it to fight the Civil War again. This is going to be interesting.
The thing of it is, the Civil War never ended. It just changed battlefields. It went from the cornfield to social media.
Yeah. And Lee never surrendered. That drunk Grant just stole his sword, and he was too much of a gentleman to ask for it back. Oh, my. We better quit. We're going to be in all kinds of trouble. Snapper's in. He said, sorry, I'm late. And I believe he is the moderator. AR American's in, and he said, good evening. Hi, AR.
Howdy.
Doug Duke said, so Buffalo Bills fights with Yellow Hand, and his first scout for Custer wasn't the first one. So it isn't so.
So that's the first scout for Custer, yes. But really what I was trying to say is that the battle at Slim Buttes was the first major victory after Custer, because that was one where they had actually hit back at the one of the groups that had been at the Little Bighorn. But no, you're absolutely right. Buffalo Bill did fight with Yellow Hand, not too far out of the Red Cloud Agency, which was at oh God, I'm having a brain fart. Can't remember the fort there, Crawford, Nebraska.
No, that would
Camp
be Lincoln.
Fort Robinson.
Yeah,
Jeez,
Robinson. Okay.
Brain fart there, but yeah, it's just out of Fort Robinson. Basically, they were trying to stop a group from going and joining that had left from going and joining the Sitting Bull and them, and yeah, Buffalo Bill is going to fight with Yellowhand, and he's going to take his scalp. And it's funny, as I was at the museum there at Fort Robinson, looking at some of the stuff, and they have this beautiful headdress on display there. And I was looking at it, and it doesn't have much of a sign there. It just says, there's the 812 train on time. I'm going to pause, let this get past.
There it goes.
Yeah, now the worst of it's past. So anyway, they had this beautiful headdress there, and then after I seen that, and I took a picture of it, I think, I was looking at that picture of the drawing from the Bill Cody holding Yellowhand's headdress up, because not only take his scalp, but took his headdress too. And I think the one that I got on display is that headdress. I could be wrong, but if it's not, it's close to the original one. But the other thing that was cool there is I got to see Little Bat Garnier's Lehman rifle, which I sent a picture of that to Garrett, which I don't think...
I might have it.
If not, I'll send it to you again here right quick. But
it was the Lehman rifle?
Yeah, it's a Lehman, yeah.
Okay, you can go ahead and send it to my email, and I'll get it on here.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll go through some more chat while you're doing that, if you don't mind.
Dang, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Gray Pilgrim's in. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm skipping. Okay. AR said Wesley Richards, Greener, Anson Daly, H&H, just to name a few. Yes.
Yeah. Wesley Richards was one of the ones I was trying to think of.
Old West History said, have you listened to the Yako, however you pronounce that, podcast on the Civil War? I haven't listened to that podcast at all.
I have not. I know who you're talking about, but I have not listened to that one. I listened to some of his stuff, but not a lot of it. Yeah, it's like some of those history podcasts I'll start to listen to, but usually when they get one or two things wrong, I shut them off pretty quick.
Snapper said, lowering a wagon down the side of a mountain with ropes, I would not want to do that. What is the name of that movie that we talk about all the time? Is it Westward Ho? No, it's the one with Robert Mitchum and why can I not think of it?
Oh, yeah, I know which one you're talking about. And what's
that one is really good with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not get a picture of that headdress. Didn't have it.
All right, so Gray Pilgrim's in. He said, hey. He said, Duke and Garrett, life good? My life pretty good. And Hardy said, watch The Big Trail. It's pretty good. You can sit through an early film aspects of it. Some of that acting is straight out of vaudeville. Yeah, I remember it. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but at one point I sat down and watched every John Wayne movie all the way through that I knew of, going through the list at one point in my life. And that was probably the only time I watched it. But as I recall, it was pretty good for an early film.
That's funny, is some of the John Wayne movies are better than the movies they spend millions of dollars today on. And a lot of those they filmed inside of 3 weeks.
Yeah. Kodak Tackman said, testify, boys, whistling Dixie.
All right.
Okay, we're almost let me catch up here, and then we go again. I've watched The Big Trail many times, thoroughly enjoyed it, Louisiana Gray said. Texas in 1836 said, back in the late 90s, I portrayed a native scout, a unit we worked with sometimes said we were going to be galvanized for this event. I refused to participate.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they tried to get me to play Galvanized Yankee out there at Fort, and I wouldn't do it.
Stephen M. Mann says, we back at Fort Laramie?
Not yet. We'll be next week.
Everything Black Powder wants to know, how often does the train go by?
Oh, whenever they feel like it. Sometimes it's every 10 minutes. Sometimes it's every 2 hours. We had one day of reprieve because they had a derailment down at the train yard. And train had split off and was going to the train yard and popped 2 cars off after because the crossing went out there. That was right where it split into about 4 rails wide. So they had to shut it down because they had the thing blocked off and no trains could get into the yard.
You better watch your P's and Q's. The master's in, dude.
Oh, hey.
Wild West Extravaganza.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says, what did I miss?
You missed the first portion of the Scouts.
But you can always rewind.
Yep. And I guarantee
okay.
that picture, too, when you get through here. We'll pull that up.
Stephen M. Mann said if he's in Fort Laramie, could be a half an hour in my day. And they're just talking to Wild West Extravaganza there. Let me get through here, and we will be. Let's see. William Slosser said, how long was the Stagecoach era?
Not real long, because the Stagecoaches in Colorado didn't really start popping up until the 1850s. Bent's Fort became a Stagecoach station, I want to say in 52 or 53. No, excuse me, 59. 59 it was, because they ran from 59 to 79. They used it as a Stagecoach station. But they didn't last long because as soon as the rail lines come in, a lot of times the stages went out of business. And 79 is when they closed the station at Bent's, and that just happened to be the year that this train got to this part of Colorado. So
it ran on the Santa Fe Trail for a long time, though, didn't it?
Yeah. The Santa Fe Trail has a long history because it went from, being a merchant route in 1821 to a stagecoach line and then a rail line, which is why you got the Santa Fe Railroad. That's what runs here is Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. The stagecoach era, depending on where you're at, might run a little bit longer than other areas. But, as soon as the trains come in, the stage lines got put out of business.
Yep. Six Emperor Tyrannus said, I hopped the trains in the summer of 86. And Everything Black Powder said, this goes by so often you won't even notice. AR American said, he's talking about the Blood Light video from Everything Black Powder. Snapper said, thanks, Louisiana Gray. All is well on my end, brother. All right, so I'm not going to read any more of the Civil War stuff just because I think it's funny to read, but I don't want to read all the Yankee stuff out loud. So I'll just read Gray Pilgrim's comment here. He said, Lincoln, let me think. He's a crooked railroad lawyer whose only claim on history was he played a part in the death of a famous 19th century actor.
Oh, jeez.
Way to go, Gray. Way to go. Okay, I'm done doing that. Now people are going to get mad. But we have been... Oh, did you email me those pictures?
I emailed you the one. Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to bring them up here if you want to give me just a second. There was something I was going to say here.
Oh, Steve, you live in that building? I think it's still standing.
Let me see. I got to bring up my email here. Hopefully I don't kick us off.
Yeah, it's funny. It's up there at Fort Laramie. The trains always come through. They're not supposed to blow their horns. In fact, there's signs on the rail that says they don't blow their horns. They blow their horns.
And you only sent me the one picture, correct?
Yes, I just sent one because that's the only one I had.
Okay. Download. Okay, if I hit that button, that will be bad. We don't want to hit exit and kill everything. So
yeah, don't.
Hey, we're still here. We're still here. All right.
We might be in hot water.
Yes, sir. All right, let me draw this over here. All right, now we will go to brand. Okay, Gray Pilgrim said right quick, he said, did you know that the AT and SF does not actually make it to Santa Fe? Santa Fe Station is in Laramie, New Mexico.
Yeah, it gets its name, I think, more for the trail than the town. because it's the Santa Fe Trail. And if you look on the old Santa Fe line, it runs on the old Santa Fe Trail because they're in La Junta, Colorado, which is where the Santa Fe Trail crossed the Arkansas River and went south. And if you follow Highway 350 out of La Junta to Trinidad, you're pretty much following the Santa Fe Trail the whole way. I mean, you're not very far from it either way. In fact, it borders it for a long time, but the rail line runs right alongside that highway.
There it is, the picture.
The top gun there is Littleback Garnier's rifle, which is a Lehman Trader rifle. And that is a full stock percussion cap gun.
Very nice.
And
it's had a heavy load or two. Look, the stock's cracked right there through the side plate screw. And that trigger guard is very reminiscent of some of what you see on like your cheaper CVA Hawkins and stuff today.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of those CVA Hawkins are actually copies of closer copies to the Lehmans.
Mm-hmm.
But the Spencer down below just says a native gun. It doesn't specify who had it or what.
It's missing the one screw that holds the stock on the. Yeah.
Pull up my pictures because I think I took a picture that describes those. If I remember right.
Man, look at those gloves.
Yeah,
those are some serious gloves.
To somebody. Because I think the Tomahawk and the War Club were noted people. Let me see. I took a picture of one of the descriptors. Oh, okay. The Spencer just says Spencer carbine used by an Indian warrior and obtained by Buffalo Bill Cody. So that could have been Yellowhair's. God dang it. The guy he killed. That could have been his gun.
Mm-hmm. Or you want me to go ahead and take this down?
Yeah, you can. That's fine.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to see that, it's at the Fort Robinson Museum, just outside Crawford, Nebraska.
Yeah. Wild West Extravaganza wants to know that human hair.
In the picture, pull that back up again. The hair off of the end of that one Tomahawk, I think that's horsehair because it's dyed red.
Mm-hmm. That's off the end of the Tomahawk?
It's off the end of that.
It's off the end of the club. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's off the end of that club. The Tomahawk there is actually, that's a peace hawk. It's a pipe hawk, which is
not good for hitting people.
Pretty decorative. Actually, some of those are built where they are made for combat. They've got and that's got one that's got a thicker handle on it. Then you get some of those that were just kind of decorative pieces. It's got a little bitty dowel rod essentially, and those, the natives did not like them because you can't use them in combat.
Yep. Okay, we're almost caught up here. Let's see if I missed anything, guys. I'm sorry. One more thing here. Gray Pilgrim's still talking about Santa Fe Trail. He said the rail runs to the bottom of, I don't even know how you pronounce that. It's Spanish hill.
La Bajada.
Up to Santa Fe is another almost 1,000 feet. Okay.
Well, close enough.
That's funny. All right. One more question here. Texan said, have you boys ever been to the Texas Rangers Museum in Waco, Texas?
I have not. It's on my list.
Yeah. Would you say Spencers were fairly common in the era? I'm thinking of getting back into living history and like to know if something is normal, used, general. Depends on the era.
Yeah, Spencers were pretty common in that era. You'd still see quite a few Henrys. The Winchester 66s are starting to come out pretty good. Garrett's got one on the rack up there.
Right below that CVA mountain rifle on the wood rack there.
But unfortunately, we can't handle them anymore in the chat. So, Spencer wouldn't be a bad choice. The Henry wouldn't be a bad choice. 66 Winchester would be acceptable. Either the carbine or the sporting rifle. Either one. Spencer's is getting a little bit too new.
The Spencer's going to be really common because what year did you say we're talking here?
1870s, early 1870s.
Yeah, because in 69, early 1870s, they surplused the Spencers and the Smith & Wesson Model 3 Americans real quick. And so those two things are going to be on the civilian market early in the 1870s.
So, all right, so you'd see quite a few of those. But And if I remember right, even during Red Cloud's War, they talk about up the hayfield fight that the woodcutters all were armed with Spencers, and at Fort Phil Kearny, a lot of the woodcutters were mixed of Spencers and Henrys.
Yeah. So now are you already pretty well finished?
Okay,
up?
so I kind of finished up there, and I talked about the Battle of Slim Buttes is kind of where I left off at. But yeah, up there in the Northern Plains after that, the scouts, they kind of don't get used as much. But there was other scouts, down here in the Southern Plains, there's other notable ones. Comanche Jack Stillwell was one of the scouts for Custer for a number of years in Kansas. Participated in the Battle of Washita. Lonesome Charlie Reynolds basically followed Custer everywhere and is going to die with Reno's companies at the Little Bighorn. But yeah, a lot of those guys and a lot of those newer generations, some of them come out and were Teamsters as well. So, the Frank North and his brother were Teamsters that, knew the Pawnees, and they're going to become the chief of scouts essentially for the Pawnees that'll be used up in the Northern Plains, in fact, during Red Cloud's War. So that was the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on. We've talked about the civilian scout side of things, then talk about a little bit about on the Indian scout side of things. So I mentioned on the Rosebud that the Crow were used as well as the Shoshone. So a lot of times when the Army was going against a group of Native Americans, they would hire on tribes that were enemies of the group they were going against. So Custer had Arikara scouts. Of course, Crook had Crow and Shoshone scouts. And the Pawnee were used as scouts as well. And so the North Brothers, like I said, they'd used them. So during Red Cloud's War, towards the end of the Civil War, because they were commissioned as officers, even though they were just in charge of the scouts. They're going to play a role up in the Northern Plains using the Pawnee Scouts prior to Red Cloud's War, is what I should say. But yeah, you're going to see a lot of Native Scouts, and down in Arizona, you'll have the Apache Scouts that go against. And I need to read up a lot more on those, but they were used quite a bit by the U.S. Army. And I've got the book. I just need to sit down and read it. New one, Wolves of the Blue Soldiers, which is, the Indian Scouts that were used. And, it's got some great info in here on a lot of the Native Scouts. In fact, there is 1867. Yeah, they were still using the Pawnee Scouts. So during the Red Cloud's War, that's Frank North. And yeah, he was the one that was in charge of the Pawnee Scouts, and that's one of his scouts up there at the top. Yeah, he has a traditional the Pawnee head hairstyle going on there. So yeah, there was lots of Native Americans that were used as scouts. And speaking of Spencer rifles, let's see, this is during the Modoc War. So this is out in California. But these Native Scouts, a lot of these guys have Spencers, and it doesn't show up very well there on my camera. But all the guys in the front there have them. One of the guys in the back has it. One has a Sharps, and then the two in the middle actually have spring-wheeled trapdoors. And I think they're the old 50 caliber ones.
Actually, they got, just give me just a second here because I got a book on that very thing. Keep going. I got exactly what we're looking for.
Right. Well, the reason I say they're the 50 caliber ones is they're two-band. They might be 73s. But this was in 1873. That was leading me to believe they're all the old 50 cals. All right. I'll kind of read off because I can get some of the chat over here. Hardy says, sometimes I'm so jealous of y'all who live out where the cool history is. I'm in Indiana. Our history was never popular, so it's hard to find a lot of times. Yeah, and some of that history is just a lot older, too. So sometimes it's harder to find that older history. But, yeah, out here for us, it's not that far away, considering, if you think back to, like, European history. where they've got stuff that goes back 1,000 years. We out here don't have a lot. Oh, let's see. Steven Sheets, how's it going? Jeremy Gunslinger's in. Hardy says that's one of the things I like about the movie Unforgiven. They actually show guns that aren't Winchesters and Colts. Yeah, that's true. That is true. I love that opening, or one of the opening scenes there with the when Clint Eastwood has the star double action and can't hit the broadside of a barn, then uses the old shotgun, and then Morgan Freeman has a Spencer. So yeah, that's really I really like that movie too.
Okay, so what year did you say that picture was?
73.
Okay, so yeah, those are going to be 1868 rifles and 73 issued to Indian Scouts, because we have Indian Scouts issues. Fort Bennett, Dakota Territory was where the rifles come through, and the first 73 rifles and 4570s were not issued to Indian Scouts there until July of 1877. And then in Fort Bowie, Arizona, we see 1873 rifles issued to Indian Scouts November 1st of 1881. Right. And then they did it again April 1st of 1882 in Fort Bowie, Arizona. And that was the first time they issued the Scouts in Arizona, the Indian Scouts carbines. So, yeah.
These guys are probably carrying the 50.
Two bands would be the 1868, and I just read there that they had issued a lot of 1868s to Indian Scouts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That should make sense, because in 73 they're going to give the soldiers the new stuff and give the Scouts the old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I mentioned Crow and Shoshone Scouts. There's Washakie, who was one of the Shoshone Scouts with Crook up at the Rosebud. And then on the other page is Plenty Coos, who was one of the Crow Scouts up at the Rosebud. So, yeah, that's quite a few of them there. And then, there were Oglala Scouts that served with Crook. So, right here we have Three Bears. Let's see. Three Bears here, who's an Oglala that served first sergeant of the Sioux Scout contingent with Crook in the fall and winter campaign of 1876 and 77. And then you have, let's see here, got Philo Carlark. Yeah, he was he wrote the book on the Indian Sign Language and stuff. And then he's with one of the Oglala Scouts, and then there's also an Arapaho Scout there below him that served during the 1876 campaign. So they did eventually get Lakota and Arapahoes to work as scouts. Then it gets into the Apache Scouts here. Chato, which is the namesake for a what's his name?
Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson movie, yeah.
His Land.
Yeah, Chato's Land, which pretty good movie, but another one of those, the historical accuracy is junk, but at least they use percussion guns. But anyway, yeah, so far what I have read out of this is a pretty decent book here. It kind of covers all of the Native Scouts. For other books on them, there's can't think of the name. There's one that's specifically on the Pawnee Scouts, and there's also a book on Frank North, and I think I can't even remember the title of it, so I'm not even going to try to remember. But
well, guys, we just broke 40 viewers, so maybe if you leave a thumbs up over there on Duke's channel, you will be able, because we're growing and growing. We topped out at 38 on the last live chat, and so man, this is really starting to go. I got a few comments here, and then I have one last question on Scouts. If you want me to go ahead and read a few of these comments,
sure, go for it.
Way I can kind of keep caught up with them. This is a very interesting one, because Duke and I have actually traveled to museums to find the answer for this question. But let's see. Nope, that's not the one. Hardy said, are there any repros of pre-1873 trapdoors, or are we stuck with 73s for non-original? Funny thing about that, there's one fort that has a whole bunch of pre-73 replicas, and only one that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah, we were there at Fort Larned, and they had the infantry bays got a bunch of 50, 70 Allen conversions.
66s.
66s. What did I say?
You got it right. You said Allen conversion, but that'd be the 65.
What year did I say, though?
I don't think you said a year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Allen conversions. Bunch of the Allen conversions, 66s. So, anyway, yeah. So we asked around. There was like, those look brand spanking new. Well, they were. They were Uberti reproductions, and Fort Larned had done a special run. Apparently, Fort Laramie was supposed to get a handful of them, but that never precipitated. So
we all wound up
have any up there. But yeah, apparently, yeah, there was a special run of those, and it's too bad that they don't offer them as a regular because I'd love to have one. Or
I think there was like 140 of them, and they ran into an issue at Larned because they got all of them, but they sent them the wrong cleaning rods. They sent them actual 1863 style musket rods with them. And so Larned was having an issue here. They're like, there's no reproductions of these cleaning rods. I think they finally got them to make them, but it was an interesting deal.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you want to see some reproductions, go out to Fort Larned. They've got quite a few of them. But yeah, that's the only repros I know of that are out there. And if there is any more, then they're probably as rare as hen teeth. Kind of getting to be like those Harrington or Richardson made 73 trapdoors, which are as good as the originals. They're very hard to find, but I think
we'll see one here next week.
Yeah, officer model. The problem with the Pederselli reproductions is that they are junk. They're poor made, and if you buy one, buy a couple of ejectors, buy a couple of firing pins, because those things are going to wear out. But I think the firing pin that broke, we had a small arms guy, I'm not going to say names, but up there at Fort Laramie, and he was trained that on the muskets, you spring a ramrod down. Well, he would do that with the 73 trapdoors. And then one of the guys, after they did that in the inspection, they sprung it, went up to fire on the blanks, and his gun wouldn't go off. And the firing pin wasn't, it broke the firing pin. I think what happened is he slammed that down there and he busted that firing pin because you don't spring the ramrod. That's not a ramrod, that's a cleaning rod. Mm-hmm. To check the gun, you flip the trapdoor open.
Yep. Texan 1836 said, Garrett, have you jumped into that $500 book yet? Yes, I have. I've been reading it every evening. It's answered one real important question. I knew that there were 5,000 1865 rimfire Allen conversions made, but they all went to the 12th Infantry, which was basically the Washington City Guard, but 4,980 of them showed up there. And no books that I could find covered what happened to those other 20. Well, it turns out that 18 of them somehow wound up in Fort Casper in Wyoming, and 2 of them accidentally wound up in Virginia. And that was really interesting because I didn't read that anywhere else. And just talking about scouts and what Duke and I'm talking about here, the reason I was questioning that was because the Army in 1879 took in some Cheyennes and their captured weapons and had 2 of those 58 rimfire Allen conversions that were not supposed to be in the West. So now my question is, was that gun actually the first Allen conversion in combat before the Hayfield fight? So when did that fighting happen around Casper? Before the Hayfield fight?
Yeah, that one. So that one was during the 1865 Indian War, or a continuation of the Colorado War, if you will. But there was the Battle of Platte River Bridge, which Platte River Bridge was a military, just kind of an outpost, where Casper, Wyoming is now, basically to protect the crossing, the bridge that crossed the Platte. And the Cheyenne and Lakota and Arapaho are going to attack that in, God bless it, I forgot, June, I think it was, of 1865. It's where Casper Collins is going to get killed. So Casper Collins was the son of William Collins, who was the commanding officer of Fort Laramie. And he was with the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cav. He shows up there. Now, the 11th Kansas Cav was the one that was stationed there, but he showed up there. The Indians attack, and he leads a relief column to try to get, because there was a wagon train from the 11th Kansas Cav that was coming in from Red Buttes, and they didn't know the attack was going on. So he tried to rush out there to warn them, and he gets killed himself. And that's why they changed the name of Platte River Bridge to Fort Casper.
Okay. That answers my question, though, because those 65 Allen conversions didn't actually leave the factory until early 66. Yeah. So they were not involved in that mess then. But somehow 2 of them got out to natives. So,
but, well, then that gets past my idea that they were captured there at that fight. But anyway, yeah, so there was that big battle there. But there was lots of other battles that took place. And who knows, they could have got captured during any little conflicts that took place in Red Cloud's War.
Yeah, very well. I mean, they probably didn't have much ammunition for them after the 66 came out.
Because the 65 War really doesn't come to an end. It just changes. It goes from the Colorado War, the 65 Indian War, right into Red Cloud's War. So it's just continuous fighting pretty much from 1863 on through 1868. And then you have a few years of peace, some peace. But you still have, Sitting Bull up there, and Custer fights him in 73 and then fights him again in 76 and gets his butt kicked.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Texan. Yeah, thus far that book's riveting. I really am enjoying it.
Yeah, let's see. I'm going to get to the bottom of the check because Wild West Extravaganza has got one there.
Okay, I'll jump down there. We'll go back, guys.
Yeah. George Bent was involved. So was Robert Bent and Charlie Bent. All 3 Bent brothers were involved in that. So sometime after that, and I forget who the officer was, but basically there's going to be a troop of cavalry that's going to come in contact with the Bent brothers and several of native warriors. And they have a little parley there, and the commanding officer meets with them and says, what will bring about an end to this conflict? And the Bent brothers say, we want Shivington hung. That's the only way we're going to stop fighting. And the commanding officer says, I can't do that. And he says, I can't treat with you, but he says, I will make your wants known, try to bring about a peaceful end to this conflict. And Bent brothers say, okay, well, so we leave here in peace. Why don't you give us some goods, and like coffee and sugar and such, and we'll all leave this site peaceably. And so they go back and they send a soldier out with the goods. The soldier gives the natives the goods, and supposedly Charlie Bent pulls out a revolver and kills the soldier right there, and they take off. So Charlie Bent was kind of a little SOB. I'm gonna say it the short way. He was not a nice character. If we'll get into Charlie Bent there a little bit. He was always kind of rambunctious. He was the youngest son of William Bent. William Bent and Owl Woman. So William Bent had several children. He had 3 Cheyenne wives. First was Owl Woman, Yellow Woman, and Island was the youngest. He has 2 children with Owl Woman, and supposedly a third one, I think it was George, if not Charlie, with Yellow Woman, and then has a few more with Owl Woman. So the whole idea that he wasn't with them all the time, he had all the wives at the same time. Then Owl Woman's going to die giving birth to Julia Bent in 1847. Yellow Woman is going to leave him, and supposedly she gets killed somewhere during the Colorado War. Now, I have not found other documentation other than what one book says about that. I thought she got killed a little bit earlier, but maybe not. Island will run away from him because Island was pretty young. Island divorces him essentially, and he takes on another wife at 60 years old, and his last wife that he had was in her teens when they got married. So, they didn't worry about age back in the day. But yeah, Charlie, Island kind of pampered Charlie and turned him into kind of a little pain in the butt. So he was always known to be kind of wild and rambunctious. After the battle or the massacre at Sand Creek, Charlie Brent basically goes up to his dad and says, if I ever see you again, I'm going to kill you. because he blamed his dad for everything that had gone wrong. And then when William finds out that Charlie's committing atrocities, the mutilations he's been accused of, William Bent at that point disowns him. But Charlie was kind of a wild one. And then Charlie's going to get killed somewhere 1867 or 1868, somewhere in Kansas. I don't think it's well known exactly where, but it was in a little scrap with the soldiers somewhere there in Kansas. He's going to get wiped out because while Red Cloud's War is going on up there, the Southern Cheyenne come back down here into this area and continue to raise hell all over eastern Colorado and western Kansas. You have the Battle of Beecher Island, which the Bent brothers supposedly were there. And, they're going to continue on to the Washita battle and I think a few more depredations after that. But, the Bent brothers are definitely some of those, they got to see both worlds because their dad, when he was old enough, they sent him back to St. Louis to be educated. And Robert and George actually served in the Confederate Army. George had been captured and paroled back, and William had sent him out to the Cheyenne village. Robert was back home. I don't remember what the story, if he had been paroled or what, but William was afraid that the pro-Union people in the area would try to kill him, so he sent him out to the Cheyenne village, their relatives, to be safe out there. And shortly thereafter, Shimington attacks him at Sand Creek. And Robert Bent was forced pretty much at gunpoint to leave him, lead him out, the soldiers out to Sand Creek where they were camped at. So all the Bent children were there at Sand Creek the day of the massacre, as well as, others that they'd grown up with. Can't think of his name. John Smith, his son Jack Smith was there. And Jack was murdered that day, taken out of a teepee after the fighting was done, if you even call it fighting after the massacre was over, and just, shot. So it's a wonder that the Bent brothers weren't shot also. But, after that, they go on one heck of a vengeance ride, starting in 1865 with Julesburg and then going all the way up through Wyoming.
The Saboteur's in. He says howdy. Saboteur 45.
Yeah. We
should get him on this show someday.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that.
Deja Vu is here. A couple questions here. Jeremy Gunslinger said, see y'all later. William Slosser said, I thought The Homesman was a great movie.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought it was a little bit dreary, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it's a dreary movie, but it's still a good movie.
Louisiana Gray said, well, at least they had the proper sense to be good old rebels.
Yeah.
Gina Woods is in. There was one thing here I was wanting to read. Victor Schultz is in. All right. So just to kind of, and I don't know if there's a good answer to this, but just to kind of wrap up what we were talking about. Obviously, one of these days, you're probably going to do a video on the Apache Scouts in the South, and that goes on for a long time. What are we looking at for scouts in the North in the 1880s, 1890s? Do they just fade away because there's nowhere else to scout? Or
I pretty much just start, transitioning into other lines of work. I think I mentioned it before, but Frank Gerard is going to go to buffalo hunting there for a little while, do a little wolf hunting as well. Basically, just kind of they fall into whatever work they can find. So a lot of these guys, they hired on as scouts because at the time it was good pay. And so they knew the territory, so they were getting paid just to ride around in their home and say, okay, this is where you find this, this, and this. After that, a lot of them, Big Bat Pierre settles down on a ranch or does some ranching. If I remember right, he was living up on Pine Ridge. Little Bat Garnier moves up there. A lot of them scouts, especially the mixed blood scouts, wind up on the reservation with their native families. A lot of them go into farming or ranching. And that's why if you go up there on the reservations, you still see a lot of those names popping around. You still see the Geneses, the Bordeaux, the Betaloons, the Richards. They go by Richards now, but that's the Reshaw family. They kind of just settle down and lived as best they could. Comanche Jack Stillwell was a strawberry farmer in Wyoming before he died at a young age of 50 some odd years. So, yeah, they just kind of did whatever they could do. Al Sieber, of course, he gets killed working as a scout, but Tom Horn, who was a scout during the Apache Wars, comes to Wyoming and hires out as a range or stock detective, and he gets accused of murdering somebody and gets hung for that. So yeah, they took up work wherever they could. But it's amazing. A lot of them did wind up going to farming and such. Even Kit Carson, Tom Tobin was running a farm in his latter years. So they just did whatever they could do to make a living. They were just kind of. It's like I say in my one talk that I gave up at Fort Laramie, they're ordinary men, and at one time they were put in an extraordinary circumstance, but they just were average people out here in the West. It's just the fact that they'd spent their time out here and they knew the land, and they became valuable to the military for the military to accomplish its mission. And once its mission was accomplished, they didn't have much need for them anymore.
Mm-hmm. So as far as the North goes, then there's really only 2 generations of scouts.
Yeah, really, for the civilian scouts, yeah, there's the generation thing is not a set in stone thing. It's just kind of a generalized. Like I said, a lot of that first generation is the mountaineers, the guys that come out here in the early days, even fur traders and such. You can really categorize them into that. And the second generation, a lot of those were the children of their marriages to natives. And then, even some of those in that second generation were people that come out and had worked since then, like Frank Gerard. He was working as a teamster up in northern or southern Montana up in there and got captured twice by Indians. And the second time he got captured by the Lakota and stayed with them for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And that's why he gained all his knowledge. Let's see, Wild West. The best book, I've got the book that his biography, autobiography, whatever it is. His biography. That one's a pretty good source, but Frank Gerard, like a lot of other people, is known to tell tall tales. And so I supplement what I read on him by other books that would pertain to where he was doing and where he was at. So that's a good one. Because surprisingly, even though he does tell a lot of tall tales, a lot of his stuff isn't really all that exaggerated to the extreme, not like Jim Beckworth. Holy Moses, that guy exaggerates a lot. But there's several other books like Centennial Campaign, Slim Buttes, Powder River by Hedron, Rosebud by Hedron. Then there's a book called Indian Scouts and Skirmishes that has a little section in there on Big Bat Poyet's version of the Sibley Scout, because Big Bat Poyet and Frank Gerard were very good friends. And Frank Gerard in his book says that during the Sibley Scout, he was having to keep Big Bat going because Big Bat was suffering from a venereal disease. Well, Big Bat comes out and says that Frank Gerard was telling a fib, that it was actually Frank Gerard that was suffering from a venereal disease. So it kind of goes back and forth in there on that. But both of them were on that scout, no doubt. But yeah, it's just one of those things you got to, especially with those first-hand accounts, you got to supplement them. Unless it's a diary being written as they're doing it, you always want to supplement a first-hand account, especially the later it gets written after the fact, the more that kind of gets messed up. The number one thing to get screwed up is years and who was wearing what.
And Frank Gerard and Frank Gerard.
Yeah, that's the other one. I'm just about to go there. So William Jackson gives a pretty good account of the Custer battlefield with Reno. And it's also in that book, Indian Fights and Skirmishes, The Military View, which is, I think it's a Jerome Green book. Great resource anyway. But anyway, there's a section in there from William Jackson. And William Jackson talks about Fred Gerard, who is also known as Frank Gerard. because his full name was Frederick Francis Gerard. And he gets him confused with Frank Gerard, who is the half Pacific Islander, the son of the Mormon missionary. And so the thing of it is, both of those guys were at Little Bighorn at one point in time, but both of them were not there at the same day. So, and even William Jackson gets them confused because he was good friends with both men. And when he describes Fred Gerard, he says, oh, yeah, he was a half-breed of the son of a Mormon missionary Polynesian. And he says he lived with Crazy Horse and them. He had him confused with another guy that had not lived with Crazy Horse and them. Because Frank Gerard showed up about the middle of the night after the battle. But Fred Gerard, was there with Reno the whole day, and him and Billy Jackson barely escaped Reno's. In fact, they got hid in a bunch of bushes and waited till dark before they got back to Reno's lines, along with 2 other soldiers. So, yeah, that gets confusing sometimes. And it had me confused because I got on here and the first thing we had done, which, has been taken down since then, but the first thing we done on the Northern Plains, I was like, yeah, Frank Gerard was there at the Little Bighorn during the fight. No, he wasn't. He was there after the fight.
Well, we get a chance to redo that now. Yeah. Texan 1836 said, y'all need to come down to Texas. I'll be doing a living history event 2nd of this month, San Jacinto, for the anniversary of the battle when we won our independence from Mexico. That sounds like you guys.
This 2 days before I start my job, so I can't make it down there.
Yeah, I can't either, but we hopefully have some stuff planned in June, but it's not that direction, sadly. So, let's see. That's about it for the comments. Other than Stephen M. Mann said most beaver trappers drifted into Oregon Trail Scouts.
Yeah.
And Saboteur said, to be frank, too many Franks.
Well played. But anyway, yeah, Josh, on your question there, if you send me a text here in a couple weeks, I'll be back up in Wyoming, and then I can take pictures and send. Well, actually, no, I can take pictures and send you now. I think I got pictures of them on my phone, but yeah, I'll send you some of the books on Frank, because yeah, he's got an interesting life. The one thing though on the main book on Frank that I'm going to warn you is that the guy that wrote it starts to talk on his views and opinions on things. The thing of it is he does not do any transition. So you'll be reading it and it'll be Frank's words, but then it goes into the author's words and it's like, wait a minute, this just changed from first person to third person. And sometimes it gets a little confusing. But yeah, it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, he said, will do. Gerard is definitely someone I want to dive into one day.
Right. And also, there's the Eli Richter book on the Indian interviews. It's got some stuff on Frank Gerard too. But Slim Buttes talks about him because Captain Mills did not have a very high opinion of Frank Gerard. There was a lot of folks that did not have a high opinion of Frank Gerard because apparently Frank Gerard would lead them to a battle and say, okay, there's the Indians, have fun, and then he'd take off.
Well, that's what he's paid to do. He's a scout.
Like, we expect you to fight. And he's like, no, ain't being paid to fight. You're paying me to find them.
It's in the definition of the name, scout.
Yeah. And up at the Reynolds fight, and I think that's where Frank Gerard kind of got to where he just didn't participate much of the battles because he had told Reynolds, not to let the natives get up into the hills behind the village. And they got away from him. And he kept telling Reynolds what to do, and Reynolds kept ignoring him. And he finally said, to hell with you. I'm going to go here and start seeing if I can find collectibles, essentially. So he was, picking up any beadwork and stuff because at that time, you could supplement your pay selling beadwork back east. Something like this, if you was to capture it, you could take it back east and you could get a ton of money out of it. So he starts taking, basically war trophies is what he was picking up.
I think that's funny. That's literally the original job description. Scout.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not a soldier. I get paid too much to fight.
Hardy said, with so many people heading west, do you know of any notable people from Indiana doing cool things out there?
Not off the top of my head.
I'll tell you got good history, though. I saw your comment a little earlier. I was actually out when you commented it and do credit, but you got Friendship, Indiana, which is
that's true.
Right now is the biggest mecca for muzzle loading in early, 19th century, late 17th or 18th century. Friendship, Indiana happens twice a year, and thousands of people show up for muzzle loading events. And I think it's the biggest outdoor flea market that hosts firearms in the world.
Right.
And that era, a lot of people overlook because they're all excited about what's going on out west. But the era, what I like to call the era of the squirrel rifle back east, the 1830s and 20s, Tennessee, Indiana, Kentucky. There's a lot of stuff going on out there, and it's really cool history. People always overlook it. It's not big stuff, but just the average little day-to-day things that are going on in places like that is what allows the westward expansion to happen. Because, like Duke's always pointed out, up at Fort Laramie, how much does a can of corn cost? Where does that corn come from?
Exactly.
And, it costs $1 a can up there. That stuff's got to be shipped in. So that's where everything's coming from, and that's where the trail really starts back in the eastern states.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of that's got to come overland from the East Coast because it's either got to go down the coast to New Orleans and up the river to St. Louis, or it's got to go overland to St. Louis.
Yeah. Also you have Townsend's there in Indiana. Just saying, you're really lucky. So
anyway,
sorry.
Anyways,
go ahead. I interrupted you.
So that's why I've got this knife, is because I portray mostly a scout up at Fort Laramie now, and so I have this kind of as my, you could say it's a war trophy or a gift or whatever. But it was not uncommon to see guys walking around with beaded knife sheaths.
Johnny Ringo was born in Wayne County, Indiana. There you go. You got a hero. Somebody just walked over your grave. Okay. So, are we pretty well?
Easy at all.
Pretty well
that's about shot.
You did exactly in 1 hour and 30 minutes, pretty much.
Did that one pretty good. Although we had some pretty long breaks in there, but anyway, that's kind of the general overview of the scouts. And like I said, at some point in time, we'll get into the Nez Perce and kind of go into the scouts and stuff there. But that pretty much is the scouts there. And eventually we'll get down, because down on the Southern Plains, you also had Billy Dixon and several of those other guys that were buffalo hunters that wind up being scouts for the Army because they'd spent time down in that area. And I didn't touch on Bill Cody and Wild Bill Hickok because they're the more famous ones. So I I probably should start reading up on them because I don't know that much on them. But when I do my research, I try to stay away from the famous ones and start trying to bring and shed light onto the less famous ones.
And maybe one day they'll deserve their own episode.
Right, exactly. Because when you get people that come in, especially when I'm up there at Fort Laramie, everybody knows about Bill Cody. Everybody knows about Wild Bill Hickok. But you bring up the name Big Bat Pouillet, nobody has a clue. And really, they're the ones that played a big role in it. Not to say that Bill Cody didn't play a role in the West. He absolutely did. But he gets a lot of spotlight, whereas the other guys don't. And so, that's kind of what I do is I bring and shed light on those that don't get the attention. They should have some attention.
William Schlosser asked a question where James is from. Right around Clay County, Missouri, right on the Kansas line, basically. Right in there.
So the next question is what would everybody like to hear about on the next episode? So this is where you got a chance to chime in and come up with an idea on there, and everybody can kind of vote on it if they want to. But there's one caveat, however you pronounce that. We're probably not going to have another one in 2 weeks, just because I'm going to be heading back to Wyoming next week, and I don't know what my schedule is going to be. So the next one probably would be on the 22nd. That's the weekend that I start back at the fort. Also, my good friend is getting ready to leave to head back, or she's moving the following week there. I think her last day is that following week. So it's like I'm going to probably be spending some time with her. So probably not going to have one on the 22nd, but we'll probably have one on the 6th of May if we can make it work. But anyway, yeah, if anybody's got any ideas and wants to chime them in there, go ahead. Or, we could, for ideas, we could revisit the Northern Plains Wars, because by then I'll have my books and so I can refresh myself. We can hit those again. I know folks have been wanting to talk about Tom Tobin.
That'd be a good one. Someday down the line, Wild West said, is it going to be on Scouts or whatever?
Yeah, the next episode could be on whatever. But if we do the Northern Plains Indian Wars again, that'll be kind of like just redoing the one we've done before. Only I'll have my act together a little bit better on this one. But that's kind of a thing we was doing over there on Garrett's channel. But unfortunately, we had to take those down for reasons I won't get into. But we had done the generalized one, and then we did Powder River, which the Reynolds site essentially. We talked about Rosebud. We talked a little bit about Little Bighorn, and I think I touched a little bit on the Horse Meat March. But I kind of want to get and finally do all that all over again. And eventually I want to do the closing out of the Great Sioux War, which should be kind of the last battle there where Morning Star Dawn, the book Morning Star Dawn's based on. But I
have a few suggestions too, but they could be down the line. I'd like to someday do history of the Santa Fe Trail. And when you're up there sometime, not next, of course, but I would like to someday touch or get a deep dive into Wounded Knee. When you're up there.
Wounded Knee is one I definitely got to read a lot more up on. But Wounded Knee is definitely one that, we will get into. We might even close out the Great Sioux War with that one, because technically that's kind of the last big battle. It's actually just a mass. But,
we got some.
So Saboteur.
Yeah, you said the Horse Meat March.
Yeah, and I'm at Battle Slim Buttes in there. We could do that.
Chris Klein votes for Tom Tobin.
All right.
Gunsmith 4570 says the Buffalo Wallow fight south of Camp Supply with Billy Dixon.
Okay.
Louisiana Gray says the Santa Fe Trail sounds real interesting. Yeah, but since that was my vote, that's not going to be the next one.
Santa Fe Trail is one of those that I could do pretty easy. Tell you what, I need to read quite a few books on the Buffalo Wallow fight, Gunsmith 4570. That I'd probably include into the Southern Plains War.
Plowboy's Ghost is in.
Hey, Plowboy. Okay, Plowboy votes for Wounded Knee. All right, so I will get into the Buffalo Wallow later on, and because I want to kind of incorporate that one into the whole Southern Plains Indian Wars, which I got to do some more reading on. And I'm going to take the books with me so that I can get that done this summer. So let's do it this way. Saboteur says Horse Meat March, which kind of continues on with that Northern Plains Indian Wars. We'll do that one as one. Tom Tobin is one. And I don't want to get into Wounded Knee just yet. So we'll do Santa Fe Trail, Horse Meat March, and Tom Tobin. That's the three we'll vote on for this one, for the next one.
Okay. So put your votes out there, guys, and we'll see what we're going to talk about. Probably be about a month before we get to, but that'll give you time to read.
Snapper says I should do a video on the brushy Bill Roberts.
Yeah, the amazing, extraordinary life.
I'll just do the whole thing right now. He was a freaking liar.
What Wild West videos title? Little Brushy Bill is a liar.
All right, yeah. So go ahead and throw your votes out there.
What did you say our choices were again? I think I can
horse meat, Tom Tobin, and Santa Fe.
See if you can post a
poll.
A poll. Do you know how to do that on your channel there? Yeah, since you're on your channel.
Yeah. In fact, I'll do it right now.
Because I can't do it from this end, I don't think.
Now, that being said, if we take the poll, it's not a guarantee we'll wind up doing that project.
Yeah.
It comes down to how much I can read in short a time.
Well, like you said, you're gonna skip one. So we got Gina Wood said Tom Tobin.
All right, so we got 2 votes for Tom Tobin. But let's see here.
And in the meantime, I will just sit here and talk. Hi, how y'all doing? Snapper said horse meat again.
Why don't you go get that $500 book and show off to everybody?
Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta go over there and get it
so
off
I'll
my
make a poll right now. All right. So once I get this posted, y'all can go over and vote on that. So we're going to add the option of the horse meat March. Oh, I'm only limited to a certain amount of text. Okay. Let's see. Crook's third. It's Crook's third campaign.
All right, so guys, this is the book, most expensive book I ever bought. I think when Wild West Extravaganza, I had him on 11 Bang Bang. We were talking about most expensive books, and I said one I would never be able to get is this, because right now this book is retailing on Amazon for $475, and a year ago it was $275 on there. I got lucky and bought this directly from the printer as a second. And so I got this one for closer to $300. But yeah, Erskine S. Allen, director of the U.S. Armory in Springfield, Massachusetts, inventing and manufacturing the new weapons that won the Civil War by Kevin R. Spiker. And this is from the Edwin Mellon Press. So basically the way it works is a college professor wrote this book, and he just pays to have short runs of it printed. But yeah, as far as I know, only book on the life of Erskine S. Allen. And it's really important to knowing your history of your trapdoors and stuff. But it actually starts all the way back at the War of 1812 and how his dad worked for Springfield. And then he started working for Springfield in 1829. And just a lot of information in here that is not anywhere else. Obviously, Kevin R. Spiker has gone through a lot of letters that were in Erskine Allen's personal possession that are not even in the Springfield archives. So, yeah, it has been very entertaining thus far. Roswell Lee. I've learned more about Roswell Lee than I ever thought I would. Not a huge book. Let's see. We're looking at around 233 pages, but overall, very nice book. And this one's a second, so a couple of the pages, the letters kind of run, or the print kind of runs off the page. But, you know, I really do enjoy it. It costs so much because, yeah, it was written in 2013 and they only print a few when they need to. And when you got a corner on the market and nobody else has written on this subject. And like I said, these guys spend years collecting the information needed. And that's why they cost so much.
If they do a good job, they do. Then you get books like that one that I spent $15 on that guy, I think, wrote in about 20 minutes because there wasn't much research into it. Yeah. Wow, boy.
5-day battle in Lincoln. Josh? Plowboy wants to know that. Oh, man.
So, anyway, I just made a poll here on the community channel. If you don't want to go vote over there now, you don't have to, but you can go over and vote later. So
it's on the community post?
Yeah, I put it on a community post on the poll. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't know how to do it on here.
But
yeah, go ahead and go over and vote on that. I'll let it run until noon on Monday. and then I'll shut it down. And that'll be kind of, like I said, no guarantee that we'll do the one that gets voted on. Because like I said, it just will depend on how much reading I've got done. I can easily do Santa Fe Trail. Tom Tobin I need to read up on. I can talk about the Espinosa raid pretty easy because I've read a couple books on, or a book on that anyway. And the Horse Meat March I can get into a little bit. Yeah, it's all going to depend on how much time I get to prepare for it. So.
Mm-hmm. Snapper said, being the way that history is written usually by the victors, it wouldn't shock me that many things in history can be actually just people's opinions instead of actual true facts.
Right. But yeah, it's like, you know, and Wild West said,
when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Yeah, okay. You're saying that thing on the Espinosas, it's like, yeah, there are those that viewed them as heroes, and there are those that still view them as heroes. But it was kind of one of those things of, you know, pretty much with the Espinosas is they got tired of being pushed around because it all, you know, stems back to the Mexican War when the Anglos took over and basically, you know, took away the land rights and such of folks. Basically, it was kind of a vengeance right to get even for that. But there's also those that claim that those weren't, they were just the first two Hispanics that Tobin came across and killed them. But the thing is once they got killed,
it ended.
It re-ended. So that kind of tells you he did get the right ones. And Tom Tobin was not the kind of person to not get who he went after.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is Tom Tobin was related to the Espinosas. His wife, I think, was Espinosa's cousin, if I remember right. So that was kind of a family affair, if you will.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a great book out there. It's called Season of Terror. And the thing I like about that book is there's a couple things that are cloudy, and he doesn't make a claim one way or the other. He prevents both sides of the opinion and, you know, kind of says, well, this is why, but this is how it may have happened, or this is what other people think. And so it kind of leaves it open for interpretation, which, you know, that's one thing on history is you can't take a 100% definite thing on some things. There's some things that you just don't know. And it's better to say, well, you know, this is all the views on it than rather say this is exactly how it happened. Turn out to be wrong later down the road.
Let me see here. Let me see. Diane Houston has a question here. I grabbed a book for it.
Let me go grab a book right quick here, Garrett.
Okay, so Diane wants to know, how do you find out if your 1860 was issued to an officer? There's really no way of knowing unless the officer bought it personally or he
had his name engraved in it.
Yeah. Now, what I suggest you do, and it's expensive. Well, it's not as expensive as it used to be, another one of these, but the Colt Model 1860 Army Revolver. This is by Charles Pate. I bought this book when it was $200, and then as soon as I bought it, they reprinted it again, and now it's down like $60. If you want to know about an 1860, this book is invaluable. He spent years tracing serial numbers from one end of the country to the other, and very likely your serial number range will be found in this book. Obviously not guaranteed. There's a couple ways you can go about this. You can send for a letter from Colt. If it's a gun like an 1860 Army that's made before the fire in 1864, your chances are very slim they're going to have anything on it. They'll probably charge you $100 just to tell you we don't know anything. But at least you will know. Unless it was some private purchase or something really early on, maybe a civilian purchase, you might come up with something. The other way to do it is to get this book. And if you can find your serial number range in here, you can pretty well, like my original 1860 Army, I can tell you was actually issued to Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, for militia, just from its serial number range. I don't know who it went to, what company. I just know the state of Kentucky purchased that serial number range. Snapper's Antique Firearms, we can closely nail down his original 1860 to being the 22nd Pennsylvania Cavalry, I believe. And you can do that, but you really have to get into this book. And it's got just every variation, every serial number the guy could find. Of course, it's not 100% complete. It's never going to be. But there's a good chance that you're going to stumble across a serial number range that will fit your gun in this book. You're probably not ever going to know if it was issued to an officer unless it turns out that it was issued to its serial number range winds up in some infantry unit where, of course, only officers would have them. Correct, Duke?
What's that? In the infantry? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that would be one way to determine if it was issued to an officer. Other than that, I shouldn't say 99%, but a high percentage of these guns are going to wind up going to cavalry units, and not all of them are going to be federal cavalry units per se. You're going to find a lot of state militias and stuff, which are really hard to find records for. And you may, if you have an early enough one, you may have a Confederate one, because there are a few Confederate guns out there that were made very early, within the first 5,000 anyway. But that's all I can tell you on that exactly. That's a
sorry.
I was just going to say that's the Colt Model 1860 Army Revolver by Charles W. Pate. It's a must-have if you want to know about it.
And I got to get my copy. Wild West. This is the book that I've got on the Espinosas, and this is a pretty good book. Now, it's worth noting that Charles Price, this was his first nonfiction book that he wrote. I think he did a pretty good job on it. He's got his references in there. And so, it's presented. It's a very well done book, in my opinion. For those Remington fanboys, the Espinosas, they used Colt and Remington. So either one works. But it's interesting, 1863, they had access to fairly new guns, and that is an 1863 new model Army. So I don't know how they got that thing that fast, because it wouldn't have been out for very long. But anyway, they had them. This one's really good. I really like this book. And then, of course, you've probably got this one. So this is the one all on Tom Tobin. But if I remember right, the Espinosas were related to Tom Tobin.
Yeah. I heard that on Wild West Extravaganza. I know it's true.
Yeah. They was cousins. If I remember right, he was married to his wife was one of their cousins. And then two of those marks on Tom Tobin's rifle, which it ain't going to show up in there, but Tom Tobin filed marks for every man he killed in his rifle. The Espinosas are on there. That's a pretty good one on it. That's the only one that I know of specifically off the top of my head, but I don't remember. I think I bought this online, and I bought it just because I was going to do a series on the Colts, just like Garrett was doing a series on the Colts. And I was going to talk about some of the noted folks that used them, and that was one of the reasons why I was reading up on that. Let's see.
Just to piggyback on that Colt question, Duke would know more about this. Didn't officers have to buy their own equipment? Diane Houston, so I would think it would be on the same as civilian. I don't know.
Buy their forms.
Yeah, I don't think they had to buy necessarily their own handguns, but they could. I believe you would have been issued an arm. I haven't studied that far, and that's more on the military side. I study more on the side.
Yeah, but you could buy your own.
I can tell you this: the first 119,000 went pretty well directly to the United States government, so it might have been difficult to have found an 1860 on the civilian market in the earlier years of the war.
So when you look up Espinosa in the back of this book, there's a lot of Espinosas in there. So he was definitely tied into them. Let me see here. I think there's a chapter on the Espinosas. One thing I don't like about this book is, for whatever reason, the pages are yellow, and I just bought this book brand new.
Well, I trust you enough, Wild West, that if you say it, I'm sure that you've done some research on it. because I know how hard you research your videos.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is the chapter getting into the thing, Espinosa. Yeah, because Espinosa took place in the Taos Revolt. The thing about this Tom Tobin book is it is a very dry read.
Well, bless. I never noticed it, Josh. I never noticed it. I thought the early ones were pretty good too.
Let's see here. And if I remember right, old Uncle Dick Wooten about had a chance at the Espinosa brothers because they supposedly came into his little restaurant he ran on his toll road, and he supposedly ran them out at the end of a shotgun. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's like, Uncle Dick, if you knew who they were, why didn't you kill them?
That might have required him loading more than one chamber.
That's true.
That might have been costly. If you know Uncle Dick Wooten, you know he don't care to waste powder in her cap.
Let's see here. I'm trying to find out because I thought it mentioned in here, and it probably does. I'd have to sit down and read it. This is all on the Espinosa's raid.
You think he chased the Espinosas out with an empty shotgun?
I don't know. But I know he said he ran them out. To be honest with you, I don't think they came through there because I don't think they swung that far south. Let's see here. El Vivian's still alive, so. They just killed Vivian. Okay. Colonel Tappan, Fort Garland, yada, 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 yada. And that's the thing. Yeah, it was the brothers. It was Felipe and Vivian Espinosa that started it out. And they were the ones that did the most damage. And then Vivian gets killed. And so Felipe went and got his nephew, and they continued on. And then that's when they got caught and killed.
So over on your poll, we are running right now with Tom Tobin's at 17%, Horse Meat March is at 33, and Santa Fe Trail's at 50.
Oh boy! All right.
No, that don't mean it's going to end there, but that's just where it's sitting right now.
Yeah. I was hoping for the horse meat because I need to read up on that for the summer. But yeah, we can do Santa Fe Trail pretty easy.
I don't know how many times, Josh, I've sat around on the phone at night and asked Dick, said, tell me about Bill Williams, the last trapper of the 40s, hanging out, doing his own thing in Mexico that was way further north than it is now.
Old Bill Williams is a guy that I read up a lot of, and one of the few surviving documents that come out of Bent's Old Fort, because Bent's Fort, there aren't a lot of surviving documents, but one of them is a transaction between old Bill Williams and the fort where Bill Williams took out on credit $300 worth of trade goods because Bill Williams wasn't just a trapper. He would trade for beaver pelts with the natives as well. Took out $300 worth of trade goods and 4 traps to be paid for at the rate of $4 a pound for beaver at 4 pounds per trap. If I remember right. No, it's 2 pounds per trap. That was a debt that he never repaid. Now, it was paid on by people that owed him money. They paid it towards his account, towards his debt there, but he was supposed to pay it back the following year in 44. He took that out in 43. He never paid it back. He wound up getting killed before he could pay it back. So, old Bill Williams he was a guy that I'd read up quite a bit on. And the fact that he had been a Methodist minister and then did some of the stuff he did, he obviously wasn't a very good minister. Because he was a notorious drunk whenever he would get to town. In fact, that's kind of what leads to his downfall. At one point he goes to his friends and he was friendly with the Utes, and that's one thing that's not common. is for a white man to be friendly with the Utes. But somehow he had made good friends with the Utes, and they gave him a bunch of pelts and said, well, go down to Santa Fe and trade these in for goods and bring them back to our camp. He goes down to Santa Fe and trades the pelts for whiskey and gets drunk. And then rather come back and admit to the mistake to the Utes, he decides, well, the Army's going to go up there. So I guess he's was a scout. The Army's going to go up there and fight him. I'll go fight with him. And he gets wounded up there. He comes back down to El Pueblo, which at that time, where Pueblo, Colorado is now, was another trading post called El Pueblo. And that was not a very nice place. It's kind of the Sodom and Gomorrah of the plains, if you will. And so he recuperates there. And then he leads Fremont on an expedition because Fremont can't fight Kit Carson. And he gets Fremont stuck up in the mountains. They get blown in. Almost in a Donner Party fashion, but they managed to make it out and get down to Santa Fe. Before they leave, they cash their goods. Well, the following spring, when things thawed out, old Bill Williams figured, well, I'm going to go up there and get that cache of goods and cash in on it. And he goes up there and he's never seen again. And the Utes claim that they killed him up there. And he has had such high regard, even though they killed him. They held him in such high regard that they wound up giving him a chief's burial. So they give him apparently a scaffold burial somewhere up in the mountains in a secret place. And he's just never seen again. But it's amazing, even though he fought against the Utes, that they had enough respect for him that they gave him the honor of a chief.
Mm-hmm. So... okay, one more thing here for Diane Houston, and by the way, Diane, I have an hour plus long video over on 11 Bang Bang on the history of the 1860 Army, where I dive into a lot of this. But some of this I'm working off of memory. I have the book here in my hand. So if you got a cartouche that's visible, well, first of all, if it's an 1860 Army, chances are really high it was used during the Civil War. Now, maybe not in combat, maybe it was never out of the holster, but like a bunch of, they made very few of them after the Civil War. So almost all Civil War production. 119,000 purchased by the United States military alone, and then there's 218,000 of them basically made. So there's around 99,000 still left. Almost all of those were purchased either by the early ones by Confederates, or the militias are going to buy almost all of those. If you have a cartouche, that means that it passed. And if you, like I said, if you get this book, it'll tell you exactly what every cartouche means. I actually have an Ainsworth marked 1860 Army, which that would be important later for Custer, but he was the inspector. If it passes inspection, you're going to see that go almost always on to the military sales. If it does not pass inspection, but it's not condemned with a mark C, a big C on the back of the cylinder, it's going to go on the civilian market. But if it's going on the civilian market because it did not pass a military inspection, you're not going to get that military inspector's cartouche on the side of the grip. So most civilian guns are not going to have, not all of them, most civilian guns are not going to have a cartouche. All military accepted firearms should have a cartouche unless the stocks have either been changed or it's worn to where you cannot read it over the years. Like I said, you got to have that book, and go check out my video, because most of that I'm working off memory now. I don't remember everything.
Because I think there's like 5,000 or so made after the Civil War. There's not a lot of them made after the Civil War.
Literally 5,000 or so made after the Civil War. Not very many at all. After the fire.
Keep replacing what they can't fix.
Mm-hmm. And they did. They sent a lot of parts out after the Civil War, too.
Yeah, because I seen one, I think Lock, Stock, and Barrel had it. It was an 1869 made 1860 Army. So they were still making it pretty late.
Yeah, Snapper, Ethan was supposed to send you pictures of her revolver. I don't know if he did or not.
Yeah, Chris Klein's got one there. Yeah, Bill Williams was the one you did not get in front of him in a starving time, because he would make any qualms about who or what he ate.
I never heard that part of the story.
Yeah, there's possibly one count of him I think it was him killing and eating an Indian woman. But the thing of it is it's a story that was written at that time, a fiction story that was based off of guys that was out there, and old Bill Williams was one of those guys. Because if I remember right, it was him, another trapper, and this guy that was writing the book. They were caught out in the prairie, and one of the Indians they come across gave them a woman, and they didn't have any food or anything, so other trapper that was with him went out looking for food, and when he come back, the woman was not at the campfire, and the guy was frying meat, and the guy went kind of looking around and found the twitching body of the woman over there with, basically her legs hacked up. And so, yeah, I think that was old Bill Williams that they claimed had done that.
What was that in the movie The Cowboy with Glenn Ford? I only ate a haunch.
But yeah, I mean, you gotta survive back in the day. But yeah, old Bill Williams, he was a rough customer. Yeah, I think George Ruxton, I think, is the one that talks about that. But yeah, it's very hinted out that he did partake in some cannibalism. Yeah. Of course, Alfred Packard did too.
Supposedly.
Well, there's no question as to whether or not he partook in cannibalism. The question was, did he kill the guy in order to eat him, or did he kill the guy and then ate him because he was starving to death?
Yeah, which is funny because like in 40 states, cannibalism still to this day is not illegal, but murder is. Yep. Murder is.
I think what they finally, after they did some forensic stuff, modern forensic stuff, they finally realized that his story was probably true, that the other guy tried to kill him. He killed the guy in self-defense and then ate him because he was starving. But
it's happened a lot more in history than people like to admit, by a lot more prominent people than Alfred Packard.
Yep. I mean, Donner Party did it. Alfred Packard, old Bill Williams is supposedly. And there were native tribes that supposedly partook in it. The Cheyenne, there's a couple of instances of the Cheyenne being noted as practicing cannibalism. And if you read the George Bernard Grinnell encyclopedias, where he actually goes down and interviews them to learn about their culture and stuff, he says it was kind of one of those things. It was like essentially their version of going to confession if they broke a taboo, is that you had to eat the heart of your enemy. And they found it vile enough that was enough to keep people from breaking taboos. But then when you read the book Powder River by Hedron, I think it's in that one, he mentions that after the Reynolds fight, when the Indians are kind of all sitting together, this Lakota warrior comes up to these Cheyenne men that are sitting there cooking meat over a fire, and he asks them, what are they cooking? And he said, the Cheyenne say, one of the soldiers we killed, and the Lakota doesn't even bother to ask him for food and leaves. He says they don't know if that was they were pulling a joke on the guy or if they actually were cooking up a soldier, but it happened back in the day. Either way.
I'll be right back, Duke. I'm making a phone call.
Sure. So yeah, it's known to happen. Let's see here. Yeah, and that's the thing. You go down to the Anasazis down in southeast Colorado, some of the places that have excavated on them, they practice a lot of cannibalism because they found skulls where they just put the head basically in the fire and cooked it, and then broke the skull open and ate the brains out of the bottom of it. Which I guess, skull makes a good bowl. That's the first MRE.
Snapper, Ethan should be working on sending you pictures of that pistol that she has. We were supposed to do that some time ago, and I think we forgot. I think he said he actually sent those pictures to Duke.
Oh, he might have. I don't know. Yeah, I think he did. think he did. I don't remember. I couldn't get him to open on my phone.
Saboteurs.
Yeah, that Saboteur, yeah. So yeah, a lot of times when if I'm not sure on something on the native history, I ask Saboteur because he is. We need to get him on here. We need to get you.
I'd
on
like
here,
to meet
Saboteur.
Saboteur.
Things work out. You might get to meet at the fur trade event.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Saboteur knows his stuff.
Maybe when you guys get up there, you can just share a screen. Said the society's only 9 missing meals from anarchy.
But yeah, I gotta give credit to Saboteur too because he's giving me reference for a lot of good books and such too. So, anyways, well, we've kind of went for a couple hours and we're starting to get off topic, but we can go for a few more minutes.
Yeah, Diane, yes, we did receive those pictures, and Ethan was supposed to send them to Snapper, and he messed up and accidentally sent them to Duke. So he's sending them to Snapper right now. I just talked to him.
Yeah, because I couldn't figure out what that was all about. I couldn't get the pictures to open.
So anyway.
So if you're looking for good info on the Scouts, the thing is, I can't recommend any one good book. Because a lot of those guys that wound up as Scouts have books on them, on the individual. So let's see here. I've got the one here. So Comanche Jack Stillwell, he was a Scout, served with Custer, like I said, was down on the Washita campaign. Somewhere over here, I've got the life of Billy Dixon, because Billy Dixon was a Scout. The life and times of Frank Gerard. Any of the books pertaining to for Paul Hedren, talk about some of the Scouts that are in there. If you're looking for stuff on the Native Scouts, I just got this book that I'm starting into, which is a pretty good overall view on the Native Scouts. There's also some other ones that I cannot remember the titles off the top of my head. But yeah, that's kind of the stuff we got going there. And then, just kind of show off some of the stuff. Eventually, we will get into frontier medicine out here.
Bleed, blister, and purge. That sounds like fun.
I bought 2 books. I bought Doctors in Blue, which is on medicine during the Civil War. And then I got this one. And this one is a little bit more in depth because it talks about a lot of the practices once I get past the some of the stuff here. I think this is kind of the later stuff because it's getting into the tuberculosis, but it gets into the diseases like cholera, epidemics. Just trying to see here. I think they show some of the stuff on tools, and I think some of this is kind of done in the later 1800s because when they've got electric light bulbs hanging down. And there's an airplane. So yeah, that's really in the frontier. But yeah, this is a great book here. Because and the title there, Bleed, Blister, and Purge, that was kind of the ways of curing a lot of the ailments. Bleeding, that was one way of curing it, and did such a good job that it killed George Washington, so he didn't have to worry about dying from his illness. And then purging the system, it's kind of like basically taking a diuretic. You're purging everything out of your bowels. And quite often that involved taking a mercury tablet.
Well, they believed that the 5 humors or whatever it was the cause of all issues.
Yeah.
If you have an issue, one of the humors is out of balance. So you could have too much blood. You could have too much saliva, too much bile. You know, it could be one of any of those things. So all you got to do, they thought back then for thousands of years, get the humors in balance. You'll fix
great
it.
One they mentioned on Deadwood too is when the doctor kind of gets crabby with Jewel when she wants him to make her that brace for her leg. He comes in, he says, "I want to apologize for the tone I took with you earlier. If we follow with the Greeks and all the humors, my bile was in its ascendancy."
Yep.
But here's one. This is a tool for removing arrowheads. It's going to be painful either way.
Yeah, Gina Woods says Fort Larned has a guy that was sharing stories and instruments. They had a great office set up there. They do have a pretty good doctor's office set up at Larned.
Yeah, and I eventually want to get one set up at Fort Laramie. I'm not going to play a military surgeon, but I think I'm going to try to do a civilian surgeon because they did have a civilian surgeon at the fort. And over there at surgeon's quarters, because at surgeon's quarters, it's a duplex. And it always was historically a duplex. They had the fort surgeon in one half and the civilian surgeon in the other. That way, the both of them would be close together if they needed the other. And the one half of it we have set up for the fort surgeon, the military surgeons there, and that's a museum display. The other part of it we use as storage, and it's like I want to take that one front room, the parlor room, and turn that into looking kind of like a doctor's office because that's often where the soldiers were sent to be examined at sick call before they were sent to the hospital, and they would be sent to the hospital if they needed to go up there, but or sent back to their bunk. Yeah, I was flipping through this earlier, and they had some. Yeah, like stuff like that. That's an arrowhead penetrating the temporal bone. So yeah, they kind of got all kinds of stuff in here.
You're not going to come back from that one very easy.
No.
Sick Semper Tyrannis said, no field amputations, huh?
I probably won't be doing that up there. Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's smallpox. My God. That's worse than what they show in the movies. Holy Moses.
So the community post right now, let me refresh it one more time, is at 20% for Tom Tobin, 40% for the Santa Fe Trail, and 40% for the Horse Meat March with total 10 votes. It's changing as it goes.
Yep. Yeah. We'll definitely do all three of those topics at one point in time. And really, Tom Tobin and the Santa Fe Trail kind of tie in together. So we might do those in a back-to-back episode if that works out that way. So, yeah, if the Horse Meat March becomes the next one, then the following two we'll do Santa Fe Trail and we'll do Tom Tobin. Yep. Or vice versa.
So people are starting to drift off here. You about ready to call it good?
Yeah, I'm about ready to call it a night here because we're a couple of minutes past. I'll tell you what, we'll run it to 2:20, even end on an even number. If you got last minute questions, comments, concerns, you want to call me an idiot, get it in the chat.
This has been a banner chat for being on a single channel because we did pop over 50 one time.
Nice.
So this thing is growing and going.
Let me see here.
You guys got 2 minutes.
Somebody saying Langford Peel, and I honestly don't know who that is. So yeah, you caught me on one there. Oh, an AR American, if you're still there, I'm going to try to send your holsters out this week. Sorry, I haven't been able to reply to a lot of stuff. I've just been so daggone busy doing stuff. But yeah, I'm going to try to ship Monday or Tuesday. I was planning on going to Wyoming Wednesday, but I think I don't know if I'm going to be able to get holsters done as fast as I want to. So I may be going up Thursday. And my friend Caroline said it might work better on Thursday anyway to come up. But anyway, yeah, I'll have yours out. Anybody else that's got an order with me, I'm working on them. If I haven't told you that you'll be on the next batch in May, I'm working on your holster. And as I get them, as I get done stitching the main seam on them, I've been sending emails to people to say, okay, you can pay for them now. And that way I can get them out. But if I've told you and you've paid, I'm going to try to get it out Monday, if not Tuesday. So anyways, according to mine, Horse Meat March is at 45%. So
it's winning.
I'll if I don't shut it down tomorrow at noon, we'll shut it down Monday at noon. But yeah, tomorrow by noon, I mean, everybody should be voted in on that.
Let me run through these last chats here.
Yeah,
Gina
go ahead.
Wood said, "Oh, you guys are my favorite YouTube cowboys." Why, thank you. Mill Creek Range said, "Have a good night, everyone. Enjoy Easter Sunday." Yes, happy Easter to you too. I'm not ashamed to say it. Happy Easter. Six Emperor Tyrannus. Thanks, fellers. The Saboteur said, "You guys have a good night." Good night, guys. Happy Easter from Chris Klein. And Snapper said, "LOL, Hardy." I don't know what Hardy said, but it must have been funny. Oh, sounds like my job. Blister, bleed, and purge. That's what it was about. Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Yeah, I think we're going to shut her down here. Like I said, probably not in 2 weeks, but in another month, 1st of May, somewhere in there, we'll have the next episode. But keep an eye out. It may change. And then, Garrett, what do you guys got coming up?
7:30 tomorrow morning. Be shooting the original 1873 trapdoor carbine. It's already one of my favorite videos I've ever made. It's pretty good length, 16 minutes and some seconds.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a history video. It's literally just me testing some carbine loads of 55 grains of powder.
And
so
then what do you guys got for your chat next week?
Let me see here. That's actually a good question because I know I have somebody. I believe I have Turkey Creek 1823 on 11 Bang Bang next week. So it may be some other people that I haven't asked yet.
Maybe around.
Yeah, and then after that, I have, just so for my own curiosity, I have By Land and Sea on the 29th, and I believe there's one other person on that chat. Oh, yeah, Land and Sea, and there's another channel on that one, and then in May, yeah, I'm not really scheduled out in May yet, but yeah, I got to schedule some more people.
And of course that May 8th or May 6th date for the Tales of the Trail, that may change too, but I think that one I'm going to be okay on, but my schedule is going to change. So for the first few weeks I'm up there, I'm going to be off on weekends, but then it's going to change to where I'm off during weekdays.
I'm probably not going to schedule out the May chats until I find out what you got going on. So then we will know. And those will be on Snapper's Antique Firearms Unlimited too, guys. And if Duke's on, they'll be on there as well on that channel, 3 channels.
And then June, when you guys are harvesting wheat, I don't know what we're going to do.
We could pre-record a few.
Yeah, we could. So just make them long videos. So anyway, all right. I'm not going to run it any longer. I'm already going over what I said I was going to. So we're going to shut her down for the night. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Be sure to join us. Like I said, probably the I already forgot the date. The 6th of May, and we will probably, from the looks of the thing, we'll either be doing one of the 3 that we're going to vote on, but looks like maybe it might be Horse Meat March. We'll see.
We might be having a 10,000 subscriber celebration for somebody between now and then.
Yeah, we're going to have to figure out what to do special for that, too. I ain't going to hold my breath. So, I think I'm 1,000 away or 1,200 or somewhere in there. But, yeah. Well, you know what? While we're on here, I keep dragging it out. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Actually, I'm going to go over to the YouTube studio because that actually gives me the exact count. So bear with me here. It's taking forever. But it says 8,920 some. So
come on, guys, spread the word. We got to push Duke over 10,000. He's almost there.
8,923. So I've got 1,100 to go almost. So yeah, I imagine we'll have it probably close to the 4th of July.
That'll be fine too.
Yeah, I might have to do some more Billy Yank stuff to get some more subscribers in. But anyway, yeah, we'll definitely.
One more comment.
That. Okay.
Bicentennial on the front frontier would be neat for the 4th. Wagon train celebrating.
No, on the Bicentennial, I may be going up to Little Bighorn.
That's not fair.
26. I don't know if I'll be up there as a visitor or if the Park Service will send me up there because who knows what will happen in the next couple of years. But Me and a buddy are talking, and if we aren't assigned up there, we are going to go for that event. So I was thinking it'd be nice to go up there and talk a little bit about Fort Laramie's role in the Great Sioux War, but that's kind of more focused on Custer, so I don't know if that'll work, but it's probably going to be a pretty big event. But anyway, want to thank everybody for coming on. We're going to shut her down now for sure. We're 10 minutes past when we was going to shut it down the first time. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming on. Stay safe out there. Keep tuned to both our channels for stuff coming out. I probably won't have much long content, but I'm going to be working on shorts here eventually. So thank you all for joining in. Like, share, subscribe. Keep your powder dry. Stay safe. Y'all take care.
Bye.